Hi everyone, my name is Amin. I'm a software engineer at Splunk. Today I'm going to be talking about our experience transitioning from a REST Redux app to using GraphQL in Apollo. Just by a show of hands, how many people use Redux in production right now? Okay, so a few people. How about Apollo? Apollo client? Okay, interesting. So yeah, we go back to about 2 years ago. We've just released new set of APIs, and as Lenny mentioned, we used to be an on-prem software, so this is kind of a big deal. These are our newest Splunk cloud services, kind of cloud-native APIs, and we've been asked to kind of build this POC app on top of these new APIs to kind of showcase some of the new features. So this is kind of a very simple app. It's a bunch of React components. There's a JavaScript SDK that's provided to us that we can use on the client to talk to these APIs. So we say great. So we built this kind of very simple app. There's like a search bar that you can write your Splunk query, timeline, and a bunch of commands. But then and the state for this app is pretty simple. So there's basically each of those circles is a component, and all this state is contained within the components. So you have kind of a parent component that has all the state, and the children kind of initiate a state change. And the parent will change the state and pass the state, new state down as pass to its children. So we don't have any complex state management, and we're happy. But then we get approached to build more features. And so we say, great, let's add some more components. And now our state is becoming more complicated. What happens is we have a bunch of components that need the same states. They're siblings of each other, and they don't share their common ancestor. So what ends up happening, we have to lift up the state multiple levels, and we start running into issues. We get a state everywhere. It's scattered all throughout the application, and the functions that change those states is scattered all throughout the app. It's harder to kind of have a one source of truth for everything. And then we run into this issue called prop drilling, which is the case when you have to pass the props down on multiple levels. So you have kind of this parent component that needs to pass the prop down to a child that's 6 levels down. And the components in the middle don't really do anything. They just basically passing these props through. So they don't really need the data, but they get the data no matter what. So we have some experience with Redux. We started introducing Redux to kind of deal with the problem. And we say, great. So how Redux works briefly is the component would kind of dispatch an action, the reducer would take it. This would update the store, and then each of these kind of connected components would then take the new state from the store, and it's all good. And you're all happy. But then enters GraphQL. I'm not going to go too deep into why we switched to GraphQL, but I think this is a nice example. Let's say we have, we want to get the date of birth of a bunch of people. So we have this endpoint called people, which we make a request to get back 2 results. And then we want to get more information on one of these users, and we make another results to get all this info. All we are interested in is date of birth. And then we make another request to get the second info, and we get the date of birth from there. So we're making 3 API requests from the client, and there is a bunch of data that we don't necessarily need. So the same call in GraphQL, the query would be something like this. So it's a lot more concise. You ask for exactly the data you need, and you're only making one query. It's up to the GraphQL service how to handle this request. It can either go to the database, it can make the same REST calls that we made on the client before, but the client doesn't have to worry about that. And we were running into issues with Redux at the same time. So we found out it's hard for people to get started. Like it was getting hard to onboard people because there's just so much boilerplate. This is an example of our kind of legacy code base that before we did the transition. And this is just a request. We wanted to get a list of feature flags from our app. So here, these are all the actions that we have to dispatch. So there's an action for just getting the feature flags. And then there's another action for the success messages, and there's an action for failures. you have to dispatch these actions. Then we have to write a reducer to update the states, and then we have sawguys to deal with the side effects. So we end up touching like 5 files just to fetch some data. And I saw this tweet a few weeks back. This is Dan Abramoff tweeting. He's a creator of Redux. And basically he's saying, I just wanted to fetch some data. Why is this stuff touching 5 different files and constant shouting? And this is kind of the gist of the issue that we were running into at the time. So we start looking at Apollo clients. Apollo client is a GraphQL client that provides us with a bunch of neat stuff that we were able to use to as a complete Redux replacement. And I explain this a little bit more. I guess the example would clarify. So this is inside a React component, and this is kind of doing the same query that we were doing before to get feature packs. And it's just in one file, and it uses, Apollo provides these React hooks. You can do it using higher components as well, but these hooks are really useful because you can just put them in your components using use query, and you use GraphQL queries to fetch data over the network, and it returns an observable. So whenever the data updates in your Apollo cache, the component would update as well. And whenever you make a network request, all the data that comes back gets stored in Apollo cache. So it kind of acts like the Redux store. And once we have the cache, we can also use it to store our global app state, our local state. I like to call it global local state. So there's a few ways to do it. You can either use a GraphQL mutation. A simpler way is to just write data to your global cache. And you can read from it. The neat thing is you can read from it by just using a GraphQL query. So you're using GraphQL to kind of query your local state of the application, which is pretty useful because you can either go over the network, and this fetch policy here says cache only. That means it will just read the cache and not go make a network call for this local state. So yeah, Apollo client makes fetching data very trivial as opposed to Redux when you have to like touch 5 files. We only need to update once. It also makes these very reusable. So we can test stuff easier. These hooks, we can have mutation hooks, or we can have query hooks that we share between components. It makes sharing a lot easier, and we can test them individually in isolation as well. And some of the things, it's not all good. I mean, some of the things that we miss from Redux, Redux gives you some predictability. Since you don't mutate the state, you're always creating a new state. Gives you the ability to do time travel, which is really good for debugging issues. Apollo has a lot more kind of magic behind the scenes. So if you run into some of the issues, it becomes harder to debug. And there's Apollo dev tools that help you with that, but I think it's still kind of early, and they're not as stable as some of the React dev tools or Redux dev tools that we've seen. And yeah, so that app, we transitioned it to become this kind of full-fledged app that was released I think a few weeks ago. It's called Spunk Investigate. So it gives us a lot more functionality. You can check it out. I'm sure if you Google Spunk Investigate, you can sign up for a beta and you can check it out. You can ingest your data and run a search. So yeah, Apollo client, this is all written in using GraphQL and Apollo client, and it works great. Yeah, that's it for my talk. I think we mentioned it before. If anything I talked about interests you, join us. We're hiring. And with that, thank you.